know.
Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. Call meeting to order, please. So everybody has the agenda before them. Was there any additions to the agenda or any additional information required? Oh, certainly.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just in light of the circumstance of the meeting here, we got a motion to approve the attendance of Mayor Montina remotely if we can.
Certainly, and that would be prior to adoption of the agenda.
Possible.
And so I guess I'll make that motion then, shall I? So I'll just make a motion to let's take a peek. Move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby approve the attendance of Mayor Montina for the entirety of the December 14th, 2021 special meeting by electronic means. Does anybody have any discussion on that? No? Okay. I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. So now that we've welcomed everybody into the meeting. Hello. Sorry. No, that's okay. We are just moving the agenda. We just made a motion to welcome Mayor Montina by electronic means throughout the meeting, and we are just making a motion on the agenda. And again, I'll ask the question, was there any additions to the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. So the only thing we had is when we discussed briefly the Director of Emergency Services position, we will go into, with council's permission, we'll apply it for a brief second just to discuss the salary grid that we're working with in terms of that. So as we're moving ahead with that.
Wonderful. And where did you want that on the agenda? Did you want that under other business or?
No, if we can just do it like with the recommendation to deal with that position, we'll just go with it right after that.
Okay, for sure. Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, so with that addition, can I guess I'll move the adoption of the agenda. Any discussion on that? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, item number 3, we have business arising from our previous minutes. And did you want to speak to that?
Just like Deputy Mayor. So basically we have the Finance Audit Committee minutes from November 23rd there, in which we did discuss the 2022 interim operating and capital budget. So there's various recommendations that are there, so we can kind of go through those one by one. In addition to that, Director of Corporate Services will put together the next item there, which kind of gave a brief overview of these changes incorporated into it with the rest of the so-called items and the estimated tax revenue and the estimated revenue expenditures and where that would sit for the budget, just for the interim purposes, and again, it's estimated for this point in time. So I'm going to speak to that when we get closer to that. If we can, I guess, proceed with the recommendations and see if we want to go from there.
Thank you. Okay. So you want us to proceed with the recommendations from there? Okay. Let's take a peek here. Did we have some folks that made the recommendations on those?
Yes.
Here? Oh, here we are right here. Okay. So I will move that recommendation then. The policy number 99-01-25 compensation and policy number 23-01-13 payments be amended to implement a 2% increase for 2022, and furthermore that the town office, community center, and Miners Memorial Parks caretaker contract, the fire chief allowance, and the chief administrative officer car allowance be increased by 2% for 2022. Did anybody have any discussion on that? We discussed it in fair amount of detail when going through these. I see no discussion, so all those in favor? Okay, thank you. All opposed? Okay, thank you. That is carried. And I guess I will ask you if you wish to have your vote recorded on that.
I think you have to ask the board.
Sorry?
You have to ask before the.
You do, you're right,
But
sorry.
thank
you
you
have to
for
ask.
asking, I appreciate that.
This is new for us to have to request our vote be recorded, so.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have another recommendation before us? Mayor Montina?
I'm sorry, guys, it's really hard to hear, particularly RK, it's hard to hear you. So I'm trying to kind of keep track and follow along here. Deputy Mayor Caldwell, are you asking me to go forward with my recommendation about the Director of Emergency Services position?
I am, please, yeah.
Okay.
You
So I
have-
would like to,
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, do you have that in front of you?
yes, I do.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I'd like to make the motion that administration proceeds. Do you guys have it actually written down differently? I'll just ask you this question first, as part of a motion that's already written.
Thus far, it sounds as though we have the same motion. Of
Okay.
course, we would, yeah.
Okay, I will read this then. I'd like to make a motion that administration proceed with interviewing for the Director of Emergency Services and include the expense in the 2022 interim operating budget.
Thank you. Was there any discussion on this? Any questions or? No, I'll call the question then, please. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Was there any opposed?
Sorry, okay. I thought we, sorry, I do have discussion actually, but I thought we were gonna go into closed meeting for this.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the closed portion would be if, assuming this motion was passed, that allowed us to include the expense in there, we then discuss just the salary grid for moving forward with that position.
So I think for right now, it's just to say that we are proceeding with the interviewing, and then we're going to ensure that we have sort of a budget item in our interim budget. So it's not that we're setting the salary at this point until we have that conversation. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so just also in that though, then we're not necessarily nailing down if it's going to be both the fire chief and the down in one, right? Because I did want to have a little bit of discussion around that.
Thank you, Mayor. The way it stands right now, and the way we talked about this as the Director of Emergency Services was such that it would be Fire Chief, Director of Emergency Management combined position, in a full-time position.
Okay.
So that is, at this point, that's the proposal, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, so we did actually have a vote on that motion.
Right.
And you.
No, I was like, stop, because I thought we were going to go to closed meeting, so can we have discussion on it, or is it too late? Because you called the vote, and then it was kind of like,
Yeah.
hold on a sec.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, you're right. You shut us, you requested
So
that we.
I know that we talked about it in the committee of the whole, but I was hoping that we could talk about it at the council meeting. Since then, I've had some conversations with some people in town and with the fire department. And what I'm hearing is maybe that it should be combined position, based on what RK said with the underwriter survey, and based on some of the sentiments from the fire department, maybe that that there's like a lack of awareness, and maybe less consultation with the current members of the direction of the fire department. I'm feeling that maybe that this is something that we should revisit. I do believe we need a regional DEM, and I think that that's something that's not only required. I think it's in our best interest. However, I don't know if having a combined position would be in our best interest. I do see that we need to put something in the budget to look at this either way, but I think that we should have discussion around that. So since our last meeting, and after some consideration and after talking to some people, this is just something that I've come to.
So I guess for the purposes of this motion, what we're looking at doing is we're looking at interviewing for the position, and we're looking at including the line item in our budget for that position. So is it, I guess I would just ask for advice, is that a clearly defined position at this point? Can we just move this forward and then have conversation about what that position may look like. I know that we've kind of had some anticipation that might be flexible based on what our meetings are with, they were having a regional meeting to look at a regional den, right? And so perhaps this is this may be a deputy den position, or it may, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, again, I did indicate, and there is, I was talking actually to Gary Zilla today, as recently, and there is a regional emergency discussion scheduled for January. The way it reads is basically CAOs and DEMs to attend the meeting, so it's not necessarily in councils at this point, but it does bring the municipalities within Lethbridge County together to discuss that. And that's kind of in talking with Gary, the intent of it is to maybe look at having that, I guess, ultimate super dam, if you want to call it.
The super gem, I love that.
And then each, which has been talked about, I know for me, we made conventions in the past, and certainly even discussions. Like say, we approached the city, the county has approached Coaldale and is working with Coaldale as their dam. And they have deputy dams at the county end of things. So it's been talked about as definitely a possibility, and sharing costs for it in the sense of them that could deal with the scenario, but still needing a deputy dam for dams at your end. The discussion of this, obviously, the previous council had talked about the possibility of, a full-time position and making it the fire chief / dam, because obviously at the present time, our previous fire chief was acting in both capacities. There was talk, obviously, with previous Alberta Emergency Management Agency people that was a good fit. There was also talk that it wasn't a good fit to have them doing both roles. So on the basis of the motion that the previous council had put forward to look at actively pursuing this combined position, we did put out the ad. We've had some applicants apply. We've done some interviews, and basically pending approval of something in the budget towards this position, we're in a position where we could potentially offer to a potential candidates in that regard. However, if council chooses to look at it somewhat differently, now's the time, I guess, to move forward. And like I say, that the purpose of the next motion to go into private session, closed session, was basically just to establish, we're kind of into that grid, and it's kind of in the numbers that have been projected with our interim budget of what we were looking at for a rough salary for this position. And so this is just to kind of establish a grid to give us the ability to then negotiate a contract or an offer within the realms of that salary grid position. Again, if we choose to go differently, that's still the council's discretion as well, for sure.
All right, so I guess I would just leave it to council. Do we feel like we want to move forward with a discussion about the benefits of having in a shared position versus the benefits of having in separate positions at this particular point in the meeting, or what's everybody's comfort level with that? Or do we want to just get this motion moved forward and then go on to our next, and have some conversations about some of the candidates that we have in place, and have some conversations about what the budget might look like, and then have some conversations about what the position might look like? Oh, certainly, yeah.
I don't know if you guys can see me or not, so I'm trying to get in on the conversation, but I'm wondering at this point, and I'm just trying to, based off of what I'm kind of hearing, I'm wondering, because this is an interim budget at this point in time, I'm not really sure exactly where we're at with the recruitment or the interview process. I know that the position did close. I'm wondering if this is something like, could you clarify, like, with where are we at in that process? Like, would we be looking at like making an offer potentially, so say this went forward like within the next few weeks, or is this something that we have a little bit of time on?
Sorry, can I get you to speak really loud, okay? Obviously it'd be nicer if you were in my spot. I'm a much louder talker.
Yeah, so I was kind of trying to turn this way, maybe that helped a little bit too, or whatever, but I guess
The microphone is that way.
Is that way? Okay, well, then I'll report that way. I guess as far as where we're at right now, basically, as I said, we did put out the ad closed, we had some applications. We did do an interview process. We interviewed actually 4 individuals at this point in time. And basically, as a result of those interviews, the intent of the interviews from what we told the candidates was that we were, provided it was approved in the interim budget to move ahead with this, that we would be probably looking at making an offer this week, is what we were looking at to close it up kind of before Christmas. However, I guess what I'm saying, even if you pass this motion as what it says, I mean, we could still have the discussion prior to the offer of the position as to, do we still want the full-time, do we want part-time, do we want to put it on hold for the time being? This could still be done. I mean, obviously, and we did tell candidates when we interviewed that potentially it was subject to approval of the budget, which was hopefully tonight, the interim budget, to have some funding in place. So even if we say there's, $70,000 to $100,000 in the budget, whatever it is, if we choose to go a different direction with it and spend 35, obviously, or whatever for halftime, or just go more the volunteer route as we've done in the past, I mean, we'll just amend the budget when it comes down to final budget accordingly on the basis of that. Tell candidates that, approve those numbers, move ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my thought on this, just in hearing that, is that Deb, or Councillor Florence, sorry, I believe that you were kind of, from what I could understand, that you were expressing some concern regarding potentially looking at this as like a shared position or something like that. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think that those are great things. I feel like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse in some regards with this. From my perspective, what I'm kind of seeing is that maybe we designate the money as part of the budget. However, we have more of that conversation about, is this the right route we need to go down? If that's possible or not, just because I feel like we're kind of in this sticky situation with people that we have interviewed or are interviewing, and what does that look like for us? We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves in some regard.
Thank you. Sorry, Jesse.
Yeah, no, well, I think Lindsay pretty much covered it off, but I did wanted to raise that I think when we discussed this originally, we thought that the position would be more attractive if it was combined, right? Because people who are looking for work potentially were not looking for a part-time position or looking for more of a full-time position potentially, right? So I'm not sure. I seem to recall that. I'm not sure if I'm making that up or not, but so that can be part of after we go through this anyway. So I think I agree with what Lindsay suggested, that we add it to the budget to discuss how it incorporates into our overall vision.
Thank you. Lindsay, are you hearing Jesse?
I caught part of it. I got the gist of what he was saying. If you could speak up louder in the future, we'd be good.
We want to make sure our mayor is fully engaged in this conversation. So everybody use their big parent voice. And sorry, CA, how did you?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess just in further to what Councillor Poultry has indicated, to advertise for a halftime fire chief probably would not have attracted, the same caliber of people, obviously. So that's why, like I say, and again, there's kind of the overlap of old council to new council. This was discussed a bit with the old council for a while, for actually a few years, and then kind of brought forward to the point of, let's initiate the process. We have advertised for a director of emergency management with our annual sort of call for people for quite some years, and really nobody's come forward. We had Colin Emerson had done it for a number of years, finally retired, and then we had basically, in a sense, coerced, I guess, our fire chief into taking it over. On that basis, we had a deputy Dem as well at a point. She's since resigned due to personal reasons, And obviously our fire chief has moved on to a full-time position, so as a result, as it sits right now, we're demless and have an interim fire chief and have no deputy dem. So I guess the trick is, even if we get a regional dem, which is, you know, or super dem, whatever you want to call it, we would still have to have a deputy dem or dems at our end. So unless we're going to put out a scenario whereby, you know, we're going to perhaps pay some sort of a honorarium to a greater degree than what's been paid to the dem position in the past, and or hope that someone internally on the existing fire department steps up to be other than an interim fire chief. At the time when our fire chief left, you know, conversations with him and his deputy at the time were such that there didn't seem to be anyone that wanted to step forward as a volunteer fire chief. Now, maybe that's changed now, I'm not sure. But again, yeah, and if that's the case, we may have to look at, you know, paying a little bit more towards that. And again, for someone to, all these firemen basically have jobs, firefighters or have jobs, you know, to a degree. So to do a half-time job on the side may or may not fit into their full-time careers as is. So, and again, the discussion is, do we need that full-time position? Is there enough to make it, you know, pay? Obviously, as discussed, there's, you know, from fire inspections to investigations to a little better training to our EOC to our, you know, our emergency plan that needs work. Those are some of the things that we talked about that, you know, in the sort of immediate forefront need to be looked after and are definitely needed some attention. But again, when you pull the trigger, I mean, that's been a discussion for a few years. Deputy Mayor Caldwell certainly is aware of that in previous discussions. So is it now? Is it not? Like I say, with what we've done to this point, you know, we've interviewed, we would be prepared to offer, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I mean, that's what we just help into it.
Councillor Florence?
No, totally, and I get including something in the interim budget. I do fear this is correct before the person since that interviews are already underway. If we decide to pull back and make changes, we potentially be messing with somebody's career. So in talking with people, there was also concerns about the ad maybe not containing info about having to win quotas. So is it someone coming outside of town? So on that hand, like, what if somebody did move to town, or if it's somebody outside of town, like that's going to make a huge impact on somebody. It seems to me that the previous council did, in fact, like, it was a little bit of a band-aid solution. Like, two problems were presented, a little bit of a band-aid. But I would honestly, I don't think, including talking to some of the folks on the fire department, it just seems like things may have changed and that there may be room for somebody to come forward. I also feel that just given what you said about people having jobs, that if it was a full-time job, it would be less appealing for somebody, right? Like, it might be the other way, that it's actually more appealing if it's not a full-time job. But anyway, based on the underwriter survey and information, which is the data-driven facts, I mean, that would be my thing. So I say at this point, we should include an amount in the budget and not be married to the notion of director of emergency services.
Certainly. Mayor Martina?
Thank you. So I'm going to make a suggestion that I think, like, if we continue to leave it in the budget, I think this is a larger conversation about how are we going to deal with emergency management in general. And maybe we have another special meeting. I'm not sure if we're planning on meeting next week or not, but maybe at that meeting we can have CAO provide us with some background and documentation options as to what this could look like, so that we are kind of more competitive and not leaving our candidates necessarily on the hook. It is Christmas time. I think a lot of them can understand that sometimes stuff doesn't happen over Christmas, over this period of time. And it might give us a couple of weeks to really see if this is the right route to go. And to then have some, I guess, better understanding as to what we're actually looking at, so that we don't lose these candidates if we choose to go down this path.
Thank you. I guess I would like to ask CAO how to, what was the caliber of some of the candidates? And I know that we were really looking at, you know, sort of making decisions based on the caliber of people who are stepping up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Obviously, the candidates that we have, we ended up with 12 candidates, of which probably 4 to 6 of them were pretty much checked most of the boxes of the criteria that we were looking for. Some being, I guess, BC or Saskatchewan sort of scenario, so that there may be some, change in some of the certification for certain investigation inspection type scenario, because Alberta has the only one that has certain rules for investigation inspections or whatever. But some of it, in talking with Gary and even Matt, kind of indicated it could be transferable fairly easily. So the candidates that we interviewed, like I say, we felt very qualified, which is, what we were looking for. And like I say, as far as, holding off or whatever, I mean, I think if we pretty much don't make a decision, say, roughly before Christmas, like almost by the end of this week or whatever, that I think then we basically go back to the drawing board, relook at it with council as a whole as to how they want to go, and probably would have to re-advertise the meeting, just to, on the basis of whatever decisions were made as to how you want to proceed. Because I know that a couple of the candidates, one anyway in particular, indicated, he was looking at other job offers potentially. And some of the others are, obviously in situations where you don't know what else they're applying for as well. So that would not part. If we don't move on it now, that's fine. We just tell them that at this point in time, council has chosen to rethink, relook at it, and basically we just review the scenario at some point if we chose on a half full time or whatever basis we decided.
Okay. So, I wonder if I can ask a question then of Councillor Florence. In conversations with the fire department, was there any indication that the acting fire chief was comfortable in continuing that position for any length of time? My understanding is that he no longer really, that this just felt like it was a little bit of an overwhelming role for him. And he didn't have the time commitment available for it. So I don't know. I got the sense when we had previous conversations that we did feel some sense of urgency to act on this because we don't have a director of emergency management. We have an acting fire chief that is feeling the time crunch, is my understanding. And are we comfortable with the thought that rethinking this and having more conversations means we go back to the drawing board and re-advertise and step back? I guess that's what I would just ask everybody. And I'm just trying to weigh sort of the benefits to one or the other, right? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Certainly, yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess, in my discussions with the interim fire chief at the present time, I mean, he hasn't expressed anything to me that, this needs to be addressed yesterday or tomorrow, or should have been addressed 6 months ago. And he's busy with his full-time job for sure, but he is managing to do what he can with this. He's also indicated to me that other members of the fire department have stepped up to help him in other areas, which is good. And which is, well, I mean, that's how it should work anyways, to some degree. He's got good captains, lieutenants, and that type of stuff that obviously our previous fire chief had utilized as well. So like I say, he hasn't really said that, hey, this has to be corrected by the end of the year, otherwise I'm out. I haven't had that from him. I do know that, he, like I say, has a full-time job, is pretty busy, he works long hours with the job he has, but he indicated others have stepped up. So I think if it took another 6 months for us to evaluate where we're at in terms of really moving ahead with something, that's fine. I think the critical thing that we need to do at this point in time is really have someone in that DEM position for sure. And we have at least a fire department that's operating. We have an interim fire chief that is operating, but we have no DEM. So if we get into a situation of a blizzard and an accident-like situation like a year ago there or whatever, we've really got nobody to step into that position. I mean, we might be able to call on certain people, and certainly Gary would help us at AEMA if it came down to it or whatever, but realistically, we have nobody in that position. So we need somebody to at least interimly step into that, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And we have no candidates
Not at this point.
for that position. Have we ever reached out to Colin, to Ms. Jemerson, to see if if he might just provide that little bit of support for now.
I haven't talked to him about that, no.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my personal feelings, and I suspect that I may be the only one feeling this way, but I would like us to move forward with what we're doing now. But then, you know what, I had the benefit of lots and lots of conversations that weren't Band-Aids with previous council. It was a well thought out, lots of discussion, and with a clear understanding of what we could afford within a budget and what we couldn't afford within our budget. And so, but I'm comfortable moving forward, but I am really respectful of the current council not having had those conversations, right? And not having that same information. So I would be very respectful of any decision that the current council is feeling. Right, Mayor Montina?
Thank you. In hearing a lot of this, I think, Deputy Mayor Caldwell, you made a good point. You've been involved in these conversations and have known how we've gotten to where we're at. And I think that for us as new council members, it's really hard to have that understanding without that background. And so that's why I'm requesting more information so that we can make those proper decisions. I really want to support our administration in getting what they need to do their jobs effectively, but also knowing that I need to balance that with my role as a person on council too, and looking at the budget. And so that's why I'm requesting that. I believe that at this point, we include this in the interim budget. And I do really believe that we should have a special meeting where we can get up to date so everyone can have the same information, so that we can make a really good decision and not lose these potential people if we choose to go down this path, because we're going to scare them off, even if we decide to change it into something different. And I think going back and forth, and we've got a volunteer fire chief who's doing these different things. We don't want to burn those people out either. And I think our inaction or our indecisiveness can do that. And that's where I feel like I just need some really good hard facts as to how did we get to this place? What does this look like? Let's talk it out and figure out what our options are, because we are very vulnerable in our current situation. And we need to act on this is where I'm at. And in hearing a lot of what you're saying, outside of that, at this point, I would say that we need to move forward with this position, this paid position, because we are at risk of burning people out or not having what we need. And so I'm just requesting that we have I don't think that we have all the information available to us today. And so this is where I'm requesting we have a special meeting.
Thank you. Certainly, Councilor Ackerman.
Just to speak on what Mayor Montina had said, I'm kind of in agreement with that. I think that right now, having this as a line item on the interim budget is a good thing. I think that we need to have a discussion on exactly what that role is going to be and just have all the facts presented to us. Maybe if we could even reach out to the acting fire chief right now and find out kind of their timeline, how they're feeling about things, if we have a little bit of time there or not, just to kind of get a feel for how things are going that way. And then maybe if we had a special meeting towards the beginning of January, I think VILA is typically a committee of the whole, but maybe we can use that to address that earlier on in the year, just to kind of narrow this down because it is important, but just have all the facts so we can make an informed decision at that time.
Councilor Butcher?
Is it possible to offer the position on a short-term basis and have them evaluate, kind of give us time to evaluate?
Would not be an ideal solution. Yeah. I'm not sure if we would be able to. Are we able as a municipality to do that? CAO, how to?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say not. Unfortunately, the candidates that we're looking at, would involve relocating. So to say come for 3 months or 2 months, I don't see that. I mean, they're in their careers. They're in positions right now. They're looking at changing their positions. I mean, your only option for an interim would be to find someone, as you said, for a den like, we'll call him Emerson, maybe a retired fire chief to step in and act for 2 or 3 months it's in the area. For instance, the Lethbridge fire chief just is resigning from his position in February or whatever the case is, but obviously he's retiring for a reason too. So, so to have someone in that capacity, or again, as I say, unless, I don't know if there's a way to split the role for the interim fire chief that's there to a certain extent and have, because at this point, I'm not sure if he's got anyone appointed as deputy, like he's just acting as the chief, and the others are lieutenants or captains or whatever in that capacity. But like I said, they are helping him out in, from what he's indicated to me. So yeah, to find an interim type scenario, I think it would have to be someone that just is in the area willing to step in for a bit, or one of your existing people or former firefighter, I guess.
Thank you. So I guess just to summarize what I'm hearing is that no one is opposed to moving forward with this motion tonight to just get that line in the budget. And then we can, and it doesn't appear that anybody is really opposed to moving forward with the position, but it's just wanting to be able to get more information to have a good decision. So I've heard a couple of different timelines, and I know that Mayor Montina is asking perhaps if we can hold maybe a special meeting next week. And I'm hearing from Councillor Ackerman early January. I understand hearing from CAO Howda that if we do put it off through Christmas, we run the very real risk of losing these candidates. But is a week enough time to collect information? And can we have a special meeting in a week with the information to have more discussion? CAO Howda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, I guess I wasn't planning on being around next week.
Oh, okay, well then that's.
Second of all, as far as additional information, I'm not sure. I know in a proposal that the previous fire chief had put together, and obviously Kyle and myself have looked at it, it does go into a little bit of some of the, a job description, if you want to call it, I guess, which I don't know if that would help in terms of the discussion either. But like I say, basically what it involves in the job description, it does talk about everything from obviously acting in the fire chief position, so obviously managing the fire department, managing the budget, dealing with fire investigations, fire inspections, which is something that kind of, previous fire chief had those capabilities. Right now, there's one of the members that has sort of the low end sort of capabilities for some of the investigations, but not certainly involving fatalities or residential houses, that type of stuff. So we have contracted out to Coaldale once, and we have even entered into a position with a fellow that's working with the county now that was a former fire chief at Barron's, I believe, to do one of those as well for us because we need to hire up investigations. In our new fire agreement that we have with Lethbridge County, it does provide that if we had people that could do it, there would be the opportunity to do some of those investigations, inspections for them, and there is a dollar figure proposed in the agreement to do that. So potentially, we can make some revenue from that. And obviously, with our new agreement with the county, there was potential that on the basis of our fire call rate payments that we get for fire calls, that it potentially was going to have that we would make a little bit more money than what we were under the previous scenario, which is just based on a percentage of expenses and based on call volume to Lethbridge to town. So if it was 50-50, you got 50% of the operating deficit. If it was 60-40, you got a little more. So the thing now it's based on every call that they go on, it's based on the Alberta transportation rates and for the hours that they're there and based on the equipment that's there. So like I say, if you get some of these fires and they've had somewhere, a bale fire type thing or whatever, or even a grass wildfire, where they're there for 2 or 3 days, which could amount to a $60,000 bill, potentially we can get that money because then it's up to the county to eat that cost or whatever you want to call it on the basis of the way this is set up. But that's what they're paid, is based on those rates. And then, like you say, further to the position, the DEM was obviously to deal with the DEM role, which basically dealt with the emergency management or emergency management plan for the town, which was started, but needs to be really gone over and really done well. Obviously, setting up our EOC much better than what it is, arranging for the training requirements that are part of the new Alberta Emergency Management Act and the regulations that are in place, and doing some volunteer junior firefighter program, some attendance at schools for fire safety week, those types of things. So, so that's kind of what's like in the job description. So I'm not sure, in addition to what other information might be necessary, other than, like I say, I mean, what we're paying now for the fire chief, we pay a monthly stipend, which is not a whole lot of money. Director Probst Bullock can probably comment on that, but it's similar to a council scenario on there.
I think it's about 7,000 or 8,000 a year is what Matt was giving.
And then, of course, they get their call rates, if they go to calls and stuff, they get their, the firefighter pay, I guess, if you want to call it that. Then we were in the past, other than when they attended a meeting to have an emergency management meeting or attended a conference, that's all they really got paid. They didn't get a monthly thing in any way, shape, or form, which was talked about with previous council at times too, to perhaps look at paying even a few $100s or something like that to have someone somewhat available and to be able to do a little bit of work. So again, I'm not sure in terms of, like I say, aside from the fact that it is a big number to put this position in the budget. We're probably talking pushing a 6-figure number by the time you get benefits and time off in lieu and that type of stuff, or we want to deal with that with calls. So again, it's whether or not we're in a position to afford that yet or not.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody have any other questions? Let's see about it. Certainly, yep. Mayor Martina?
Thank you. I have a question, and I believe that this may have been said, but I couldn't fully hear. What was the cost for, like when we had our old fire chief, when he was in this role, what was that per year versus what this one could be as a full-time?
Kyle will answer that from behind you here.
Yeah. So the old fire chief, the monthly amount would be about $78,000 a year, and then plus whatever calls you would get on top of that. So you'd probably say for the fire chief, it'd probably be maybe 12 to 14 total for the year.
12 to 14, is that what you said?
Yeah, probably around there.
Okay, perfect, thank you. My other thing that I just wanted to add is that I believe that this is one of these philosophical things, again, we're going back to this, of philosophically, how as a council do we want to handle emergency management? And I feel like because our council term kind of started in the midst of something, it kind of put a little bit of a wrench in, I guess, figuring out what this really looks like for us. In hearing this, and I think for myself, what I need to feel good about making these decisions is I need more of this background information that really can help provide the position or the statement or the rationale as to why we're doing these things at this point in time. And I believe that is something that administration probably has we have a lot more knowledge on that than I do. Certainly. And so that's why I'm really relying on to say, kind of where we're at with where we're moving with things. And so I'm looking to you also for what is your recommendation? Do you believe that we are at this point? I'm assuming that we're kind of saying that we could stop this process, but ultimately, do you believe that we are at the point where we should have this position? I guess is what I'm asking.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're very close to that, I guess, and even in discussions with our previous fire chief, we've been discussing it for probably the past 5 years and sort of kept getting closer and closer to, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And I think we're very close to saying that, yes, we're ready to move in this direction. I guess in terms of some, offsetting revenue, like I say, with the new agreement with the county, there is potential that roughly maybe another $30,000+ could be generated via that agreement, which would help offset a little bit of these costs as well, and that was somewhat taken into consideration as well. So, like I say, very closely, I guess it's similar to, almost the next item we discussed, the public works position. Again, been discussed for a number of years too. Are we ready to pull the trigger on another person out there as well? And again, there's a recommendation dealing with that next, but, so we're close. Are we quite at the full-time scenario yet? Right now, probably with the amount of emergency work that needs to be done and, moving the fire departments, a little bit further because there's, been an interim, obviously, space of not necessarily a chief in place that's a chief, it's an interim chief. And then from there, like I say, I think the need is there. And as we said, maybe with this regional scenario, if we get a certified qualified candidate in place, perhaps we can sell that as maybe we become super down with that position.
I know that we frequently do provide services to our neighboring communities. It wouldn't be unreasonable to think, and perhaps the county may find it easier to have sort of to work with a community here as well. We're not sure what that would look like, right? Rather than just going through Coaldale. And so I think some of the other conversations that were happening as well, if I could add as well to CA Ohio's was, it's been a period of time since we've had a DEM in place. Colin was really our last real acting DEM, right? We've had deputy one in place. And it's been, how long? Has it been 2 years that we've been posting for that?
At least, yeah.
Yeah, so at least 2 years we've been posting for a DEM. We know that, we now have a fire season. So we've had those conversations that things look different for us now. We anticipate that, and even just our meetings with MP McIver, even with our meetings with them, I mean, there's clear conversations occurring that says that there are higher risks, that we're looking at more natural disasters that are occurring every year, that they're not one-offs anymore. And so we are very vulnerable. And we also explored what are the budgetary implications if we did have, a point position for a fire chief and a point position for a DEM. First off, we were concerned about the caliber of candidates that we would get. And then there was also the concern that, the budget implications are significantly more if we're paying for point positions for each of them, rather than just paying one full-time position for someone to be able to do the both. We also believed that by having that position in place, it would allow them to create a much stronger, just a much stronger sort of risk management team and the fire department, so that perhaps we could have a better chance of rolling in a deputy DEM. So, I mean, there was a lot of different conversations that were approached around that. Yeah, so it was really multi-pronged in terms of the different aspects we were looking at when we were coming to this decision. It's difficult to just have this within a 20-minute time span and say to you guys, that in a nutshell encompasses a year of conversations. So, so I guess I'll go back to the original, what I had said earlier, and that was, so Mayor Montino was hoping that we could have a sit-down conversation with information in front of us that sort of gave that background that moved us in this direction. Do you find, is there anything that we have that would be information that can be provided to council members? Certainly, yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, like I say, I mean, the original, I guess, proposal that our previous fire chief and Kyle and myself kind of looked at and put together, which, like I say, had a bit of a job description. At that point, it talked about how we could perhaps support it in that particular budget year, which had some other wrinkles in it, which not necessarily is in this budget. And like I say, so aside from that, and aside from the new fire agreement with the county, which potentially provides some additional revenues towards this. And if you go way back, I mean, originally way back, I mean, there was talk that the county would pay half the position and we could pay the other half to have a full-time, but obviously that fizzled out. As I indicated previously, Picture Butte does have a full paid position, but they are the fire chief to them and deal with the ambulance scenario because they have ambulance. Fulldale is obviously totally different. They have 2 or 3 paid members. The county obviously does not have a fire department, so they rely on us. And Barron's and Picture Butte and Barron and ourselves are kind of unique in the sense that we have our own departments and we, choose to manage them that way. Barron's has just come on stream in the past year to actually have where they are getting paid from the county to have a fire department. They were out for a while. So, like I say, this regional concept of a regional emergency, where that may go, how long it may take to come into place, hard to say. If you go on the basis of our discussions with the recreation agreement and the fire agreement with the county through the ICF process, it was a fairly difficult process. Went to arbitration in the one case over the recreation part of it. But again, like talking with Gary this afternoon at the AEMA, said that he sees great potential in a regional emergency type setup. And I believe there is too, provided we can get along and deal with that. But at the same time, we still need a chief, the fire department as well. So either we have to move some up, on a basis within, or we have to look at something open above.
Thank you. So we've had some good discussion. Do we want to just have this motion move forward and, oh, certainly, Mayor Montina?
Sorry, this is my last point and then I'll call it a day. I just want to say that, thank you for providing that information. I think that what you've said to me has helped me understand more about this position, and I think what the intention behind it. And I think Deputy Mayor Caldwell, you made some excellent points that disasters are becoming more and more and more. And I just want to say that at this point in time, I am wholeheartedly behind this position in terms of actually getting this full-time position in place. And knowing that while this process didn't go, I think ultimately how we would have liked it to go, in a sense that we would have had the vision and the strategy first, that's okay. But I think, and so I just want to put that forward that I believe that this is where we need to go into the future. So I just wanted to come full circle after I asked many questions about many different ways. And just let you know where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing.
Clarence?
And I appreciate all the information too, and I appreciate the previous council and the discussions with the previous fire chief. I do wonder if maybe we are a little bit out of touch with the current fire department, because based on everything you're saying, what discussion has come from the current staff, the current members there, right? So that would be my last point. Again, I don't think we should be married to the notion of this position. And right.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm honestly at this particular point, I don't know if I just want to take a feel of the room and say if we want to move forward with a motion. Let's start with this motion in front of us right now. And so Mayor Montina had made the recommendation, and that is just to get the line in the budget. And this is to move forward with interviewing for the position and getting a budget line item. So do we want to just make that motion first? And then
I believe, did I make that motion already? I made the motion on the floor, right?
yeah, so you did. So that motion's on the floor. And we've had lots of great discussion. Right, I was thinking to redo it because we kind of cut off in midst vote, but we're good. It's still on the floor, right? So we have a parliamentarian in the room. Yeah, all right. So we have a motion before us. I'm going to call a question on that motion that we have before us right now. So I'd like to ask all those in favor.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed. Thank you. Okay, and so that is carried. So at this particular point, it's hard to take the temperature of the room, but I think that if I could, I would like to make a motion that we move forward with offering the position to, just so that we can have complete clarity on what everybody's feelings are. We either defeat the motion or we move forward in this direction. If we defeat it, then we know that we have another clear path and then we take a second path. If we don't defeat the motion, then we move forward. So if everybody's comfortable with that, I'd like to make a motion that we, do you know what? First, I would like to actually make a motion that we go into camera and we have conversations about what the budget item is. And then once we come out of camera, then we can explore making a motion whether we move forward with offering the position or not. I think that would be a logical process, right? Is everybody comfortable with that? Thank you. Does anybody want to make that motion that we close the meeting for discussions about the salary grid?
We can make that.
Thank you, Mr. Martina. Okay, so we have a motion to close the meeting. All those. Thank you. So we return to open session. Okay. So, we have a motion before us here. And I believe we're not moving forward with that motion. It's a recommended motion at this point by administration. We choose not to accept that recommendation at this point. Is that how we can proceed with that? Certainly.
It's been different, yeah, if you choose not to put this motion on the floor, then it's just lost.
Yeah.
I guess just to clarify, going back to the motion that we did pass, whether that's necessary or not in there, I guess it's sort of saying proceed with the director of services position, but we don't have a salary grid, so just by leaving it on there and not giving the salary grid, it pretty much says that you're not moving ahead with it.
Can we just step back to that motion quickly, if we could, just for a quick moment? Okay, proceed with interviewing the director and including expense in the 2022 interim operating budget. So we have proceeded with interviewing, and we're going to put a line item in our budget.
Which we did a year ago, but we did not
We didn't have
fill the
to.
position, so again, based on what Councilor Ackerman was saying, we leave the dollar figure in the budget, but just not proceed with filling the position as per advertised right now.
Not for advertised at this point. Good, thank you. Okay, so if we can move back up to our motions, and is everybody comfortable not putting the motion on the floor for the salary grid? Good, okay, fantastic. Thank you. So do we want to, I guess, so perhaps we could replace it with a motion where we, council requested administration have a meeting with the fire captains or the executive of the fire department.
That would be a good sound, that sort of the direct, at least that's the direction the council would like us to proceed in now.
Perfect, yeah, so if we could put a motion on the table to request that.
No, go ahead, sorry.
Administration, yeah, to, and I suppose at this point, it's just to have the discussions, to look at their capacity and look at their willingness to step into some of these positions.
I think it's for you to re-looking at.
Looking at what their responsibilities are and looking at what,
The fire department, I guess.
yeah. Wonderful. Perfect. Does everybody feel like that is an accurate motion that reflects the conversation that we had? Okay. So.
Can I request you read it out loud, because I'm not sure what it says.
Yeah, so, I move that the council of Town of Coldhurst hereby authorize administration to meet with the fire department regarding the structure of the fire department. Does that accurately, do you believe that accurately reflects the conversations that we've had?
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. So, if I could, I'd like to make that motion. Or does somebody else want to? Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, you guys. I'm sorry. Okay, well, I guess the next one's mine as well. I apologize. We have another motion that came out of our finance meeting. And that is a motion that administration hereby include an amount for a new public works position effective September 1, 2022 in the 2022 interim operating budget. Is there any discussion on that motion? Anybody want to have a conversation on that? Sure. You know, I right where your hand is that metal bar So, thank you. Certainly, Mayor Montina.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to just have a conversation about I guess what I'm hoping that we can see moving forward and including this type of request, just so that we have a better understanding as to again, the rationale behind the request. So my thought again is that I don't know anything necessarily about how public works happens, the requirements for staffing, anything like that. And so for me at this point in time, I cannot, and I will not be voting to approve this expense until I see essentially a report or something that can provide a rationale as to why we would do this. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess I would ask CAO Howard, do you have any information, or is there any kind of, I guess, numbers, workload, overtime hours, anything that might sort of support this?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not right off the top, I don't, I guess, but certainly, I mean, it's an item that's been discussed for a number of years as to when, obviously, our park space, our trail space, our road space, water sewer type stuff has all increased, throughout our community over the years. Again, we have long-term public works employees, which then results in, more holidays, more, potential sick days, time and due days, depending on the scenarios of the situation. We have the spray park, which has come on stream, which is a new thing that will be open for a few months in the year that will require 7-day-a-week type coverage. And again, in discussions, we certainly put together some additional stuff. We're talking September, so we can, again, include this in the budget, come forward with some information prior to advertising, whatever, in terms of, because I know in discussing it with our Director of Operations and certainly our Director of Corporate Services, we looked at things like, for instance, that, as I said, the Volker 7 contract, for instance, that we just passed. We may not need to have that in place if we have the extra manpower. At some point, we've discussed, a street sweeper as opposed to contracting street sweeping. Line painting, some of that we do, some of that we do contract. So there's various, sort of off takes that we said we could look at saving 20 or 30 or some $1,000s to offset that salary as well. So we can certainly come forward with that, prior to putting out the ads. This just put an amount in the budget for now. Obviously, this isn't setting no rates or anything at this point with the interim budget. So still to be determined, and still could be overturned if we chose moving forward. But we can certainly put together a little bit more information to that effect to help with the decision process for sure.
Thank you. So, Mayor Montina, would you be comfortable accepting a motion to have a line item in our interim budget for that position, and then have the information put forward before us before moving on advertising for that position?
I would be comfortable with that. I think that for myself, just overall, as we're getting a little more comfortable in our roles here, this is something that I'm going to request from this point forward is very strong rationales for things, because I don't have the history, and I do want to make informed decisions. And so even when we're looking at this, what I would like to see is more of even a staffing plan or a plan of an operations plan as to how and what this looks like, so that we can make those decisions appropriately. But yes, I'm willing to do that for the interim budget.
Thank you. So any other discussion on that? Does anybody else have any questions or any concerns, or certainly Councilor Akron?
My thoughts on this are similar to what Mayor Montina had said. I don't have a problem putting a dollar figure on the interim budget, although I would like to see a plan in place before we finalize that choice, just to have an informed decision on why and how and everything like that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. For that matter, we're talking September 1st. We usually do the finalized budget, in May, roughly in there. So if we chose not to even put it in now, we could still bring forward that for inclusion at the finalized budget as well. That wouldn't really change things, because we probably wouldn't be advertising until that June-ish sort of thing if we were moving ahead with it anyways. And I understand that would, help, with the rationale for council in terms of, feeling comfortable that it is the right time to, and here's the rationale for it, and here's, how we can afford it, or here's why we need it, all that type of stuff. So, it's like I say, kind of just the way things, went with the election and different things here, and the interim budget coming up, something was talked about, we thought we put it in here, and then still proceed with some information from there. So definitely was in the plans to come forward with a little bit of rationale for it anyways. So we still can do that if we choose not to do this at this point as well, prior to.
Perfect. Okay. So we have a motion on the table in front of us right now, and CA Hada is stating that if we so wish, we can remove it from the floor, and I guess what we would do is we would just table it for further information with the final budget in May. Are people comfortable with doing it that way, or would they like to move forward with it here?
I just think in a matter of process, I believe we should have tabled motions. I think is what we suggested in our training, right?
We shouldn't table them.
We should have tabled them. We should just make a decision and then raise it again at a future point.
Yeah, but I think if we require more information in order to move forward, I think that's the only really acceptable time, is it not?
Postpone, I guess.
Or postpone.
Information is the word to use. Table means we table it to later this meeting.
That's
Postpone
right.
means you put it to either a future meeting or a future date, you choose to put a date, or with further information.
Okay. Thank you. The language is so important. You were listening to the parliamentarian. That's great. Okay. Is that sounds like that's what council members are asking for more information at this point? Okay. All right. So then procedurally, because the motion's on the floor, the mover of the motion, am I able then to say that I'd like to postpone this for further information?
Yeah, if you wanted to, even if you wanted to amend or reword it to that effect, that we postpone
Okay.
inclusion of the amount for public works position prior to final budget. So,
Perfect. You're a wordsmith. That's what I'd like to say, please. These guys make us look good, don't they? Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Okay.
the wordsmith.
Okay, wonderful. I'll call the question on that. All in favor? Wonderful. Thank
Can you please read the motion as it's stated?
Okay, so I move that council hereby postpone an amount for a new public works position effective September 1st, 2022 in the 2022 interim operating budget until further information is presented.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
Sorry, one change, friendly amendment, so it would just be the operating budget, not the interim, right?
Yeah, 2022 operating, final operating budget.
Okay, sorry.
yeah, thank you. All right, fantastic, thank you. Okay, we have another motion before us, Councillor Florence, if you want to speak to that recommendation.
So I move that the council of the town of Culvers recommends no change to policy number 11-01-01 remuneration.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And opposed? Okay. And Councillor Ackerman, you have a, yeah. a recommendation for us here?
I move that the council of the town of Colhurst recommends no change to policy number 370101, storm sewer rates, policy number 410104, the water rates, policy number 420104, sewer rates, and policy number 430101, waste management rates and recycling rates.
Thank you. Was there any discussion on this? I see none. If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Ackerman, again, another recommendation?
Yeah, I move that the council of the town of Colhurst implement a 4% increase to the rates per month respectively for 2022 to the garbage collection services agreements with the village of Grants in Lethbridge County.
Thank you. Was there any discussion on this recommendation? We've had a lot of discussion on these at our finance meeting, but I see no discussion. So I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and Mayor Montina, do you see the motion before you, the recommendation that you made?
I do, it's very big.
Wonderful, there we go, okay. It is.
All right, so I'll make a motion that policy number 720102, Miners Memorial Park rates, and policy number 740101, community center rates, be amended to implement a 4% increase rounded to the nearest dollar with a minimum of $1 increase effective January 1st, 2022, with the exception of any rental agreement signed with a paid deposit prior to January 1st, 2022, being subject to the rental fees at the date of signing and with the exception of the ball diamond rates, the soccer field rates, and the camp stall rate being subject to no change for 2022.
Thank you. Was there any discussion on this motion before us? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and we have another recommendation from Councillor Ackerman.
I move that policy number 110104, payments of expenses, be amended to implement an increase for meals to the following rates: breakfast $11, lunch $14, and supper $25.
Okay, thank you. Was there any discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Thank you, that is carried. All right, folks. I think we did it. We have a final motion before us. Would anybody like to make that motion, please?
I will.
Councillor Ackerman, please.
I move that the 2022 interim operating and capital budget be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Was there any discussion on that motion before us? I've seen,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
can you repeat that a little louder?
Sure. I move that the 2022 interim operating and capital budget be adopted as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We did it. We just did our first operating budget. Do you want to just take a moment and look it up quietly? Quietly within ourselves? Okay. And now we have before us, we have our bylaws and reports, and the first item on there is the CAO report. CAO, how now?
Actually, Deputy Mayor, we missed appointments discussion there.
Oh, sorry. That's right, appointments. So, and are you walking us through that one?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So basically, at the last council meeting we had, there were some, different individuals that approached us in terms of filling some positions.
That's right.
We put forward an ad in the December town news on the websites, et cetera, which we've done for a couple of months now. Still, the odd person is still coming forward as a result of that. But I did indicate that there were some vacancies that we did have on some of the committees. And we have different people stepping up and have in the past, and in some cases more than we've had for the positions. So I did kind of list the 3 or 4 committees or places that we were looking at. Obviously, one being the Emergency Advisory Committee. where we're looking for up to 3 members at large. We did appoint at our organization meeting, Barbara Edgecombe Green to that committee. And then the Disaster Social Services Transportation Services Officer, we did appoint Barbara Edgecombe Green to fill that position as well. I put at least one. I mean, my scenario there is we only generally have one, but again, you know, in terms of the situation, it would be good to have more than one, even in that position. And even discussing it with Barbara Edgecombe Green, recently said that, yeah, it'd be great to have another individual. Because again, if you're in this situation, having 2 there would be good because you're gonna need it. And if there's a lot of situation where the other individual is unavailable, at least you still have someone else ready to go aside from volunteers that you have lined up to help. I think Councilor Florence can probably speak to that in terms of that. So I'm just saying if we have a potential to maybe have more there, maybe we should. The Recreation and Culture Committee as well. To date, we only have appointed the 2 council members as well as Kim Horak as a member at large. Some of the previous members have now somewhat indicated that they would be interested. Parks and Rec also, based on our terms of reference, were to appoint 2 members. I haven't received information on those yet. And then obviously our director, or deputy director of emergency management, and we're down. I mean, we don't have to look at so much tonight, but further to that, I guess there was discussion in terms of Barbara Edgecombe Green and her 2 appointments that are listed there. I did talk to her in terms of that, and she graciously, like I say, did submit a letter shortly following the election process, you know, and said she was interested in sitting on from MSDA to emergency advisory to whatever. She's going to help us out in whatever way she could. At the time, we only had that, so we did appoint her. I said we have interest in the emergency advisory committee in particular. Would you be willing to, you know, maybe stay on in the disaster social services portfolio and perhaps let council consider putting other people into the emergency advisory? She said, whatever you would like to do, I'm willing to help out in the capacity that I can. So, so for what it's worth, and that's there. Further to that, I guess I just did put, you know, what the emergency advisory committee entails on the basis of our bylaw, sort of the terms of reference page from our Rec and Culture committee, and then the members that have submitted their names at this point. So I guess just wondering whether council wants to deal with any of those names at this point, or do we, you know, wait until the new year to see if anyone else applies as a result of the December ad? I guess in case of the Rec and Culture Committee, they don't even have a quorum with members appointed at this point, so they even have a meeting. They can't really have one at this point. Emergency advisory, depending on where we go, obviously could go. I mean, there is 3 members there at present, but if we choose to do something different, potentially, and say disaster social services. Not really an indication from other people in terms of that, but there was talk that maybe one of the individuals might be a good fit for that. So anyways, it's brought forward. That's what I have to date as far as people and as far as vacancies.
And so are you recommending then that we move forward with the people that have stepped up to the emergency advisory committee?
Well, we have enough names, in fact, more than enough names, so potentially we could. And in terms of even the Rec and Culture, I mean, a former member of that committee, and Brown, did indicate that she was, you know, would sit again. However, said if there's younger people, that's fine. But if you look in terms of reference, we're also looking for a seniors rep as well.
Yeah.
So she may or may not feel that role, depending on your thoughts.
So we welcome the people that have, oh, certainly, Mayor Montana. Yep, please go ahead.
Did you call?
Yeah.
Did you call me?
I did. I
Oh,
called
good.
you.
Thank you. I was just looking at the different people who put their names forward, and I noticed that Chris Evans and Pam Brown have both indicated interest in 2, the same committees, the emergency advisory as well as Rec and Culture. And I'm curious about what our stance is. Do we often have people sitting on 2 different committees, or are we looking for more of that representation across town on a variety of committees? What does that usually look like?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In the past, we haven't had people necessarily coming forward in, you know, great numbers, so we've been having to almost take whoever we can get. So it's nice to see more people. I mean, that's a really good thing. Certainly in terms of our emergency advisory committee, I mean, that's a relatively new bylaw. passed in 2019. But since that time, we have not had 5 people sitting on that committee because we haven't had anybody come forward. Now we have a potential of 5+ people that would sit on that committee, so that's really good. Rec and Culture, as you realize, is just a 6-month scenario that's been in existence. So again, kind of fairly new. So I mean, it's great to see that there are people there. As far as whether they can sit on more than one, certainly there's nothing that says that they can't in terms of our bylaws or terms of reference. So it's strictly the council appointment, so whoever you choose to appoint.
So basically, long short of it is that if you are you sort of suggesting that we accept them for both positions? Both of the individuals that have put their names forward, is that?
Oh, I think it's an option, right? If that's what we choose. I do know that I was on the Rec and Culture Committee with Pam Brown, and she was amazing there.
Yeah.
But she's also indicated interest, a very strong interest and desire to be involved in the emergency management component. And so that's where I was just kind of trying to figure out, like, do we need to figure out which one she should be on, or can she be on both, or that type of thing. So that was just my thought process there.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Mayor. And certainly in Pam Brown's case, her experience with the Red Cross and stuff in the past was why she sat in our social services type committee, so quite valuable in terms of that. Lisa Van Vliet as well has indicated interest and as an ER nurse and fire departments and that, experience and that type of stuff as well. Chris Evans obviously has, the fire background as well to sit on that committee. So, and Brody Creek as well has indicated interest in the emergency advisory committee as well. So, and they all have, somewhat related experiences in terms of that. So it does make things a little more interesting and a little more difficult in the council decision. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's just open for 3 members at large.
We would have to remove Barbara if we appointed her.
And she indicated that she's happy to be a part of the emergency management team with the disaster social services, right?
Yeah.
Is that sort of what Pam Brown's role was in the past as well? Would she also? And I think that's a fantastic idea if we have 2 people in that position. I agree with and that is the recommendation that you were sort of leaning towards.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Pam, she hasn't put her name forward for that, and she did resign from that, so I don't think that necessarily she'd be the one to present back.
I see.
I think she would help if we needed. She's indicated that to me in the past, but I don't think appointing her there is what she's applying for.
Okay.
Can,
sorry.
no, it's okay. Can, if you're on the emergency advisory committee, can you also be on the Alberta Emergency Management Agency? Or do they have to be very clearly different?
It's kind of clearly different because one does deal with setting the emergency plan and sort of doing that stuff and bringing it to that advisory committee to review, and then that's brought to council for review or acceptance. So better in the sense that you're different there.
Okay, Councilor Borchard?
So we have 4 people who want to be on the emergency advisory committee: Chris, Lisa, Brody, Pam, and we already have 1 appointed, Barbara, right?
That's correct.
And then for the Rec and Culture Committee, we have 2 applicants, Chris and Pam.
Yeah.
That's right. And is that correct? Is that all that's all applicants we have so far? Right? Sorry, I just wanted to clear my head. So it sounds to me that if you appointed Chris and Pam to Rec and Culture, then there would be Brody and Lisa and Barb on the emergency. And everybody would get at least one of their choices they wanted.
Or Councillor, I totally agree with that, except switch Pam and Barb.
Oh.
Because, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things that we asked for people is we asked for a little bit of not only an expression of interest, but an expression of your qualifications for that position. And so it's really difficult to say, let's take someone that's been in the fire department for years with all of this experience and somebody who's been with Red Cross for years and years with all this experience and put them in rec and culture, right? So that we can make sure that everybody gets to have a committee. Even though we want to celebrate people stepping forward, I don't know where, what is in our mind, what would be the most important thing that we look at here? Do we look at, encouraging people to step forward and just filling those committee slots, or do we look at who's the most qualified? Right? I mean, I'm not sure what is our priority in terms of what we're doing here. Certainly, Mayor Montina.
My thought is that we look at the qualifications along with this as well. They have indicated interest in both. However, I think that they can lend great skill to the emergency component. And I think that it would be we would be remiss to lose that opportunity, right, for them, and they express even a passion in that area as well. So from my opinion, that we need to look at their skill and use that as a way to determine which committee to sit on.
Thank you. I feel the same way, but I don't know if the majority of council does. But I'm really surprised that Brody stepped up for emergency management. I mean, he really spoke a lot about sports and loving that and loving growing that. And I would love it if we could reach out to him about the Parks and Rec committee. Like, I'm surprised that, given his passion for sports and coaching and mentoring youth and stuff, that wasn't his first love. Okay. Yep. Mayor Montina?
One other question. I thought that we had appointed to Brody to a committee already at this point. Have we not at a previous meeting?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe he is appointed to the subdivision development field board
Okay. As an that's right. Yes.
as a member at large.
Yes, member at large. Okay.
But
Yeah.
I think regardless of that appointment, I think we should reach out to him and see if he wants to participate in the rec and culture.
In the rec and culture. And then Barbara has stated that she'd like to stay on social services, and then we do have our 3 members that have stepped in. That, we have an emergency nurse, we have someone who's been involved with Red Cross for many years, and we have a member of our fire department. And those are such strong candidates for our emergency advisory committee. And if we can get Brody on our rec and culture, and Pam Brown, that would be really lovely. Thank you. Councilor Ackerman?
My thoughts are just with this, like with everyone that's being applying, my only concern is if we leave people out, we don't want to lose that volunteering spirit. So if we can find a place where people within committees, maybe in this case, maybe we talk to Brody and see if he wants to be on the rec and culture committee.
Yes.
And then we use the other 3 in there, and then we move Barbara over to create that 3rd spot on the emergency committee, right? I think that would be a beneficial way of going about it, because that way, we're not diminishing that volunteering spirit, because it's easy to break it and it's hard to regain it, right? If you're told no. I agree
with you completely. I think that with that layout, and I would hope that Brody would accept our ask to please join Parks and Rec, that we could really use his skill sets there. I think, and then we do have our 3 qualified candidates for our advisory, and I agree with you. I think, and it sounds as though Mayor Montina is on the same page in terms of looking at qualifications, and Councilor Florence, are you?
Yeah, totally. Just that, yeah.
Comfortable with that? So do we need any kind of motions to that effect, do you think, or just giving direction by council or do we make motions that we appoint these individuals at this point?
Thank you, Mayor. No, it does require council motion.
It does, yeah. Okay, so yeah, because they've already put an in forward, you don't have to, the only one that we have to request is that you reach out to Brody. We can't appoint him without asking him first, right? Although it would be lovely to do that. Should we give it a try? All right.
Okay, so I move to appoint Lisa, Pam, and Chris to the Emergency Advisory Committee, and Barb, Brody, to Beth? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Lisa, Pam, and Chris to the Emergency Advisory Committee. And then Barbara Edgecombe.
And then we have Barbara Edgecombe Green that's in the Emergency Social Services. role, right? Is that
She was appointed to the disaster position. at our
the disaster
organization.
position? Yeah, she was, thank you. And so she'll maintain that position, thank you. Okay,
Barb's been removed from the emergency advisory. She's being removed from the emergency advisory. Yeah. The same committee that we're talking about there.
perfect. All right. Do we want furthermore on there, or do we want do we furthermore, we request that administration reach out to Brody and invite him to join our Parks and Recreation? Or do we want to just leave that quietly in your hands?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, I don't know if there was any appointment, I think Council Florence, was she looking at appointing anybody to agriculture as well?
Yeah, sorry.
Are you?
Yeah, I was just gonna keep going with that, but it's, sorry.
Okay, so within the same motion, please move forward. Sorry, Councilor Ackerman, I'll let Councilor Florence finish your motion and then I'll.
And then the council appoints, sorry, I'm gonna mess with that now. Cam and Chris to the rec committee.
Okay, so we have 3 members at large, and today we have Kim Warrock on that committee. So you're saying then you're suggesting that we not reach out to Brody to join the Parks and Rec committee, hey, that we put Chris and Pam on that committee and not reach out to Brody?
No, sorry, I guess I missed that part, because if, again, because we want to reach out to Brody, right? Because we don't just want to leave him hanging.
Yeah, we'd like to reach out to Brody because, well, first off, I mean, that seems to be his real strength and passion. Do we want to leave that motion for Parks and Rec until we have an opportunity to reach out to him, or?
That might be a good approach.
Yeah. Councilor Ackerman?
I was just thinking if we could break this down and just do the emergency advisory as the first motion, and then we can deal with that, and then we can probably push that other motion to reach out to Brody ahead of time before making those appointments.
But we wouldn't necessarily just do a motion to reach out to him, do we?
No,
We can just leave that.
we can just let,
So sorry, do you want me to amend my motion to 2 motions, or should we just leave it as 1?
Just take off the last half.
Okay, sorry, take off the last half?
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing about the rec and culture committee.
yeah.
Okay, thanks, Les, sorry about
Okay. So at this point, we'll just have that, and then we can move on to the others. Wonderful, thank you. Was there any discussion on this? No? Seeing none? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Awesome, thank you.
Aye, sorry, I didn't get the button quick enough.
Okay. And at this point today, there's no deputy down putting their names forward at this point. All right, thank you. So the next item before us then is, this is now our CAO report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, just doing a brief report here, I guess, just as far as the administration holidays sort of lined up here, starting as recent, well, actually one started already, one starts tomorrow, and some starting into next week. So obviously, just for your information, telehealth disclosure, we already discussed that a while back, so we'll be closed December 24th. We'll reopen on January 4th. Garbage collection has changed from the Tuesday, December 28th. Garbage pickup will be moved to Wednesday. We'll be doing all that in one day, a couple of times a year. And then, obviously, as indicated, our next meeting next week was canceled at our previous council meeting, and the January 4th meeting as well was changed to January 18th. which left possibilities of community polls on the 11th, 25th, and those types of dates in between there. So, other than that, just the Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Just expressing some of the situations we've been in the past year. Obviously, COVID was still a tough situation for us. A number of other projects is indicated there. Again, just expressing my gratitude to my great staff. We think we've done a tremendous job this year, accepting the challenges, keeping the town going, safe and healthy, and look forward to working with council in 2022. We continue to make Forest a great place to live. And on behalf of the staff and myself, wish members of council and their families a Merry Christmas. All the best for 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That was short and sweet, thank you. And did you want to speak to the peace officer's report at all, or was there any big jump outs that you wanted to share with us? I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read it, certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not a whole bunch. I mean, it's missed having it at the last meeting due to some personal situations she was dealing with, so I just thought I'd throw in this one for your information. It's a new report that she has, so it's fairly good information in terms of the stuff she's dealt with. The reason for the pen stuff is she's still working with Smart Squad in terms of some of the violation ticket citations. So she just put on the back kind of some of those tickets and how they're working. And again, she's dealing with a number of this e-ticketing and that type of stuff that we now have to work with. And she was in a course today to deal with some other stuff relating to that and stuff that's coming into place really into the new year. So eventually this all reporting will come on that as well, but just some additional information for you to have as well. So yeah, not a whole lot more to say to it than that. And as indicated, we will have Peace Officer Merritt attend the council meeting in the early new year to kind of discuss, Peace Officer program with the council in terms of, your thoughts on it, your ideas, changes, anything to that effect, what you'd like to see, what you like, what you don't like, where we can go from there. So that's something to plan for the new year as well. So.
Thank you. And actually, while we're speaking of our peace officer as well, can we look at having our new staff sergeant from the RCMP perhaps come and have a visit with us fairly soon in the new year as well? I mean, we had just a quick meeting when we were doing the pictures, but it would be lovely to have a chat. Mayor Montina, are you on board with that suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be kind of nice if we have them on the same evening. Have they met each other very well yet?
I believe they've met, I'm sure, so.
Certainly, Councilor Ackerman?
Yeah, just a couple questions. If we have questions for the peace officer, or just peace officer process in general, is that something we should just shoot to you or CAO Auda, or is that something that we should just be asking before the council meeting right now, I guess? Okay, so I don't know what about it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess it depends on if it's a complaint type scenario, obviously, you can go directly to her. If it's something other than that, or an item that you'd like placed on a council meeting agenda, obviously then it should come through me to place on an agenda type thing. And if it's a concern or whatever, we'll obviously have, have council meetings that council members reports questions or whatever that can be via that, or, requesting to add something to the future meeting, there's information needed to be done. So, and or if there is a resident type scenario, and obviously if they address a letter to council, send it to me, then it will be brought forward to the council meeting as well. So it depends on the scenario.
Yeah. Just to follow that up, I guess my questions are all the bylaw complaints being logged, or are these just the ones that she actually has addressed? And then I guess the other thing is just the information on the traffic violations. There's no times, dates, or locations, so I was just wondering if we could get a little bit more information on where that is, just to see if there's any
hotspots.
Yeah, hotspots or just common areas that we have to look at, places of interest, right?
I would second that exactly, Scott. The locations for some of these violations would be interesting to know. They're like shared, some of them are shared on here, and it's good to see, but I just think the stop sign ones, for example, are not shown where.
Just a further comment on that, Kate. Just looking at the report here, I believe there was one that was listed as a noise violation, and then it looked like the time that it was entered was 2 in the afternoon. So just getting a little bit more information on that, like, you know, was this from the night before, but this is when it was addressed and entered in the system, or is this when the complaint actually happened, right? Just to kind of get that understanding of, I guess, where the hours are being spent and where the complaints are coming from, and if we have any gaps, say if there's complaints coming in later in the day that aren't being addressed until the next day, you know, maybe that's an issue that we might have to look at down the road. So just if we could get a little bit more, I guess, clarity on some of the stuff, not specific details on who, what, where, why, but just kind of a general, a little bit more detail on the timeline of things, I guess, is what I would be looking for.
Thank you. Certainly, CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, certainly in terms of the, you know, stop sign stuff and that type of thing, that's a lot of those are the pendulums on the back, which once she gets the ability with the new report that's being set up, you'll get more similar to the information that's included in here, which, and again, some of the information that she can give out, you know, is quite useful. I mean, you have to be careful in terms of, you know, I mean, this has like 633 46th Avenue, but doesn't say name, something like that. So we can say that. And as far as times, it does say sort of on these ones that are logged here, there is a time shown on there. But certainly every file that she gets or whatever, there is a file set up for every complaint that she deals with. It may not all show up in here depending on where it goes or doesn't go, but so certainly, you know, when she's here, I mean, you can certainly talk to her about those types of things and what she can and can't put via the reporting system and reasons why or why not, sort of thing. So I think that's a good discussion to have with this also.
I mean, I don't actually particularly, for me, I'm interested in looking at more data on the whole, really is where and trying to distill out, you know, like Scott was saying, if there's an issue with a particular intersection, if people are always speeding there or people are always stopping there, that may be indicative of something else that needs to occur there, right? So that's not, I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it, at least, right? So I don't particularly need the granularity, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but something in aggregate that would allow us to make decisions would be useful, I think. So, but yeah, I think, you know, it's good to hear that some further reporting information will be coming forward on this other stuff. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Councilor Flores?
No, I just wanted to echo what Councilor Pritchard was saying, that, yeah, that's some significant details in kind of that broader picture, right? Which is what we're supposed to always be doing. I was also wondering though about the violations and just the process behind that, if I can ask about that. So when you look at the report, there's 17 reports and 5 violations. So like, yeah, I guess, because she's only, so out of those 17, does that mean that only 5 are ticketed plus the 8? Or like, so what was the follow-up from the other one? So again, with like the big picture, like is something being done for those? And I guess what's being communicated back? And then further to that,
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, I apologize. But I'm wondering, are these questions operational in nature that we're asking our police officer to?
I don't feel that,
It's an operation.
Well, I think you're right. I think they could be construed, but like she's got kind of incident types here, like
Yeah.
enforcement dog bylaw, right? So we can see that number 6, there's been the most violations in terms of the dog bylaw. Do we need to send dog bylaw policy for review, or is there actually, you know, this allows us to make decisions on policy, right? So
yeah,
I'm
so
wondering.
that's where I was going with that. It's
Yeah.
basically exactly that. It's just leading to a bigger picture thing. Further to that, when you look at this report, which I guess I would be confused at the way the report was given as well too, because what it made me want to do is look at the dates of it and when these things are happening. And what I would say to that is there's not that much happening, right? So, I mean, the way the report is given, I felt that it kind of like led us there. So, whereas like I would like it to be more big picture, like you say, like the intersection. So we need to be looking at, you know, putting in a 3-way, like the data-driven facts, right? It's interesting the feedback that we see on the internet, or even just from people. I know there's some today, but I know that today there was somebody that was trying to get a motor by officer and she wasn't there. So it's interesting to hear that she's on training because I don't think there's an away training. I know that this is a concern for people in our town. This is a concern for us. It's something that we're on. I think that it's something that we all promised to address, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to cross the line. I just want to bring the concerns of residents forward.
Yeah, so I wonder, yeah, if we were to have these conversations when she's in the room with us, and, you know, I think the rationale makes sense. And so if we're looking for a reporting that allows us to see big picture and problem areas and hotspots to say, now where's our role? Now what do we do for these hotspots, right? And so if it's her providing us education and more information to make those bigger picture discussions about safety in our community, I think it would be a very reasonable, you know, questions to ask of her when she's in the space with us. CA, how do you agree that that would be a, because really, I mean, the role is that we have our CAO who sort of oversees staff and operations, right?
Well, I know that, yeah, so nobody's
Yeah, so-
questioning that.
Yeah, so I think that from what you guys are saying, from that big picture perspective, and how can we, you know, how can we sort of support more safety in our community, and is there things that we need to put into place for hotspots and stuff?
As well as managing the feedback from residents, which right now is a lot, right?
Yeah, that's a line. I'm not sure. We'll have to have some conversations about that line. I don't know. It's just, you know, always being really conscious of what our role is, and, you know, where's operations and where's governance, right? And that's just, you know what I'm saying?
I appreciate what you're saying, and I really don't think that's being cost right now. I think that given the report, we're asking questions about the report. I think that happens when the CAO gives his report, or when the director of finance gives his report, so.
Right. Good conversation. Yeah, CAO comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And certainly, I guess what I would say to that is that that's where I think that, you know, a meeting and a discussion with her, and we've talked about having her attend at least on maybe a quarterly basis with council, similar to our director of operations, does attend meetings, you know, sort of he was prior to COVID, sort of, you know, a meeting a month or something to kind of go over, so if there's questions specifically to that staff member that they can more accurately answer. I guess in terms of your thing, in terms of if there is problem areas, you know, from either a speed sign, certainly they can move it around. That's where if she sees that, that's where certainly she can direct her director of operations to post that in different spots. And again, if there is problems with the dog bylaw in terms of not being followed, in terms of the traffic bylaw, certain situations with it, you know, other bylaws or offenses that need some addressing via our bylaws a little bit differently, that's where I'd ask her to, you know, come forward to the policy bylaw review committee and present those. And certainly, I think in the discussion with her when she's at the meeting, she can indicate with the programs and stuff that she has now, what reports she can generate, and if there's different reports that she wants, she may or may not be able to, you know, generate those via her computer program. Like I say, in the process of updating and changing it quite substantially now, to the point of where she does, you know, reports or even tickets are electronically given to the courthouse as opposed to previously she had to take paper copies to the courthouse at the end of the week or whatever it was. And obviously the other part to, you know, to determine is we had this discussion with the previous council. We had the manager of the peace officer program from the province come and speak to us in terms of, you know, the role of the peace officer and what they can and what they can't do and certain things to that effect and council's role. And obviously council can, you know, indicate that they like, you know, more traffic enforcement, less traffic enforcement, those types of things. But, you know, other things are somewhat at the peace officer's discretion in terms of the situations that they do run into. So that's where you can kind of, you know, somewhat steer, but then at the same time, you know, leave the peace officer to some discretion to deal with. So, and in terms of the rest of it, I mean, it is a one-member department. It's not 24/7. It's not 7 days a week. So, you know, and there are some training days, there are some sick days, there are some holidays, and there are some other days that, you know, she's with parents 1 day a week or part of the week day as well. So, but again, I think best would be, as I say, when she's here to have that discussion with her, with the new council, as to things, you know, concerns you have, and or things that you think are good.
You know, and I think that the other part of it is also our role in speaking to our community, right? Maybe we put together a budget that, what does it look like if we have a full-time peace officer department in terms of their taxes? And we present it to our community members to say, you know, we can expand that program, and, you know, and have people readily available for you at any given time. We can expand it and have nighttime, but this is what it might look like for us, in our taxes, right? Because it is operational, so it's not grant money, it's tax dollar that pays for operations, right? So, there's, sort of that, we sit in that middle ground there, right? So Mayor Montina?
I think this has been a great conversation, and I do appreciate that you're bringing up the operations versus governance component. I think that that's something that we need to continue to be cognizant of. I do feel that, once we have the peace officer at our meeting, that it would be a good conversation to have with her more about these high-level things that we're looking for. From my point of view, I think that having more information is not there with the intention of micromanaging her as a staff member, but it's more so for us to make those informed decisions. Because we do know that we hear from the community that, crime happens at whatever, but we don't really have any actual statistics necessarily about these different things. And I think that this will also help us to determine how we look at policing and community safety a little bit better as we move forward by being able to see that more holistic picture, I suppose.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, one has to be cognizant of the fact that a peace officer program to a police program are different, and the things that they do and don't do. I mean, peace officers don't deal necessarily with crime and violent offenses and that type of stuff. And generally, even the surrounding ones, whether it's Ridge Regional to Coaldales to Vulcans, to those types of ones, they don't operate much past 8 or 9 in the evenings. I mean, so they're not doing the, if you're looking at, the car break-ins and those types of things, that's not what they're working with, because generally they're not working in that. And that's not really the role of the police officer program. So, it has to be, you have to be aware of that and the different acts that they deal with and stuff. So, but again, I think it's a good discussion to have with the police officer herself to describe that. And if necessary, we may even want to bring in, like I say, the manager of the police officer program that this previous council had to provide some of those discussions as well.
I think, I think this council, the more education that we have, the better our decisions always are, right? So if we feel like that's something we want to do, because, there's always in the back of my mind that when we're looking at having to pay for police and we move forward, can we look at some of our own solutions and can we get creative and what can that look like? So, if council makes a determination that we would like to get more information and perhaps explore the idea of expanding our program to look at more evening, weekend type of thing, but having an understanding of what they're able to do and not able to do would be important in that, right? Yeah. Anybody else have any comments on that?
I agree with that, and I just think going back to the, bringing the aggregate information to us and in a way that we can communicate that actually as a communication tool to our community, right?
Yeah.
To share with them that, people anecdotally are saying, oh, the police officer is nothing. Well, if we had a report to share with the community, we could say, look at all that she's done in the last year, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the things that she's done, right? And then it's a communication tool to help show people what enforcement is done in our community, right? So.
Yeah. And and you're right. I think that makes perfect sense, because there are days when she's in other communities, and that's part of a budget decision to say, do we require a full-time peace officer? Not really, but she'll spend time without calls and then suddenly be in another community and then we're getting calls, right? Or, but yeah, having those reports and having that information to share. Yeah. All right. Was there any other discussion or? Are we good? There's no motion that comes out of that. That's, I guess we just have a motion to accept the CEO. And you make that, Councilor Butcher?
Yes, I move that the Chief Administrative Officer's report is hereby accepted as presented.
All right. If there's no more discussion on that, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next item we have before us is correspondence. We have a thank you for the Royal Canadian Legion. And we have and really that's it for our correspondence. Was there any discussion on that? No?
I did have a question. What did we provided the flag poles and but really they carried out the event, right? They brought all the marching band and everything, so.
Our public works guys are just really amazing. They
Yeah,
go and get everything set up and do all that really great stuff with them.
We can pass this on to the public works guys, I guess, right?
And obviously the advertising and stuff that's done on the sign and on news, that website, those types of things.
Thank you.
So we thank you to you folks for doing all that stuff, and then Public Works, give them a big cheers. I'm sure they probably receive a lot that evening. All right. So we have a motion before us to accept correspondence. Would anybody like to make that motion? Councilor Ackerman, thank you.
I move that the correspondence presented in this meeting is hereby acknowledged and filed.
Okay, was there any more discussion? Any discussion on that item? Thank you. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Oh, all right, other business. Green Acres Foundation request to present to council. Did you want to speak to that at all? See about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not too much. I mean, the letter's self-explanatory. I think it just basically says that obviously with the elections and changes in councils and regardless, the board chair and the CEO would like to provide a short overview of Green Acres, the services they provide, as well as future plans to address the housing needs for Southern Alberta seniors. For those that are new, obviously we had some discussions regarding the project a few years back. Didn't materialize. We do have a representative on board. And as well, I think it's on the executive and finance committee or something to that effect as well in the past. So I guess just the request is just that they were looking forward to presenting this request to council and look forward to a reply that we'd be interested in having on the community to bring that forward. So.
Thank you. I don't think we needed to make any motion for that. I think perhaps just express, is everybody interested in having them come and speak to us and get more information about what the services they provide?
This would be a committee of the whole or something? Or
Yeah, I think committee of the whole would be good. And so I suppose we would leave that in administration hands then to please find out what date works well at a committee of the whole and what works for them. Please make sure that the chair is able to join because he's so lovely and I want everybody to meet him. Jeff Carlson from the city of Lethbridge. And so. Yeah, good. Okay.
Sorry, can I just bring something up?
Sure.
Just a couple of quick questions. I probably should add this to the agenda earlier, but I forgot. Just curious, did we hear back from the Oman Watershed Council on that board position? And also, have we heard back from South Row on that training on January 20th? I'm just curious about that.
Thank you. Thank you. See you then.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Oman Watershed one, we just heard back that they did not have anyone appointed at their December 1st meeting as indicated in the correspondence. They said it would have to be presented to their January meeting, I believe. But they were happy to see that we had put persons in forward. And they said they were actually looking for possibly even a couple. And South Grow, in terms of that, we have not heard back in terms of that one.
And what we're looking for from South Row is if they are having their own board members attend on South Row's behalf, right? So that we can have a council member, is that?
No, that was for they had an economic development training session on January 20th.
Yeah, and so we put two names forward, right? With the assumption that in the past, if you were a board member for South Row, you would attend the things on behalf of South Row, and then we would have one council member. And the hope was that they would accept both. That's, yeah, okay, yeah. Wonderful. Does anybody else have any other questions or any other comments? No? Mayor Martina? Was there anything that you, no? This is our last meeting before Christmas. All right. So I guess we'll just all say Merry Christmas to each other. And if we have anybody that's watching this right now, Merry Christmas to those folks. If you're still watching after this many hours. All right. I guess if there's no further discussion, perhaps we can entertain a motion for adjournment. Would somebody like to make that motion? Councilor Butcher?
Yes, I move that we adjourn the meeting at 9:32 p.m.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good.
So we're gonna meet the here.
On Thursday?